Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond-producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109-carat diamond, recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior, with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Martyn Element. He's a Vancouver marketing and corporate advisor who focuses on sourcing and pursuing new business ventures and opportunities. Welcome to our Christmas show.
Best of the season to all the listeners and all over the world, and I'm thinking that it's been a heck of a good year at the end of the day for many, not for some, unfortunately, unfortunate people in the world with the more serious things going on in the world, but it has been a much better year, I think, for many people, business-wise and financially-wise.
You've been drawing up your good, the bad, and the ugly list. Well, let's always start off with the good, a nice positive feeling.
Well, the good is that, thanks to the victory of Donald Trump, that, as you were just saying, some of your people on the show all picked Donald. I personally thought that Donald was going to stand a heck of a good chance of winning. I didn't call it, but I thought the more that the media was condemning him and making fun of him and ridiculing, I thought they were playing completely into his camp and his hands and digging themselves. But so Mr. Trump got elected, and from that, although it was starting to show some signs of life just before, but things like coal, of course, has gone just through the roof in value, and it's because he is very pro coal, and also as of today, you were saying, it didn't surprise me at all that he just tweeted it today, but there was some murmurings out there that uranium is very much coming back into to view, and he has just tweeted that he's very pro that uranium needs to be looked at again because of its nuclear, and it's a very he thinks and believes it's a very good way to go. I happen to agree with him on that, but not to personalize my comments. Copper also has seen, it's been, the patient has been resuscitated quite nicely, although it's pulled back just recently. Even iron ore came on very strongly over the last, since his election. So there's been some, and not to forget the new term for the commodity, the new white gold, lithium. Lithium was doing extremely well long before the Trump election because of the mass movement with lithium and its usages, specifically in the automobile, but also the storage of all these other wonderful things. I was just reading just yesterday that I didn't know this, but Las Vegas is now 100% from solar, by the looks of things, from the fields and fields of solar panels, and I'm sure there's a lot of wind turbines there too, but they are 100% on green energy now as a city, which is a wonderful achievement. I think there could be some tempering of lithium just slightly because of the pro-coal and pro-oil from Mr. Trump, but I also think there's a lot of good things from a business front. And of course, not to make too less a thing of it, the actual Dow itself is at these heady heights, moving in and out of that 20,000 mark, which is a phenomenal number. And I think there's a lot of good going on there. A lot of people that rely on the pensions or those, with their investments thereof, with fixed incomes and fixed into a lot of these funds that can be bought. I think that they're probably looking and feeling a lot more comfortable at the end of 2016 going into 2017. And then we get into the bad. Well, of course, the bad, I think one of the things that's really going to cause a lot of heartache and a lot of problems if it really gets underway, and I get the feeling that the new era from Trump is that he very much wants to get on with it, is the raising of interest rates. And, the stats are, of course, if the interest rates are to move in meaningful terms, and by that statement I mean all of a sudden interest rates, over the next 12 months start to really get ahead of steam up, and we get into 2, 3, 4, 5%. If it wouldn't perhaps move that fast, listeners, I know, but I can believe the numbers that once it clicks over 1% or higher or whatever, all of a sudden all these people just can't meet their payments. And on that point, just before we get so the bad, of course, is the interest rates that could really cause a lot of trouble. A lot of the when we get into the ugly, but a lot of the ugly people, the ugly status is with the gold, of course, particularly locally here, because our markets in Vancouver, whether we like it or not, are very governed by the price of gold. And there's a lot of the gold sayers are saying if the interest rates start to get up, then of course you'll see the price of gold go on with inflation along with those interest rates. Now, just talking about that for a minute, Jim, is that somebody said something very interesting to me a few days ago, and when they said it to me, I thought, that makes a lot of sense that he's going to try and do that. With these debt that America now finds itself in, which is somewhere between 19 and $20 trillion, an impossible number to ever be paid back. I think I'm in the camp that says yes, that is a fact. So is he, as the new President of the United States, is he going to try and get that debt down? He's going to try and reduce the debt in some way or form? Is he going to try and, go ahead and say, look, we just don't stand any chance of actually paying it off. Why don't we look at it another way? Now, I don't have that way. I don't have that answer. But somebody saying that to me, it's not all that stupid a statement to make, that they might look at trying to reassess the actual debt that is out there, because in reality it's just something that could never will be paid, could be paid realistically anyway. So if that is the case, then why do you just leave it up there? We might as well just try and adjust it or remove it. The other ugly that we've got, which started as good, was the British public voting to be out of the EU. And, the more I read every day on that, it's starting to get very ugly. Because some of the major members there, Germany and France, of course, are incensed that Britain would dare to want to vote for this. So if they dare to vote for this, then we are going to make their lives an absolute misery on leaving. And of course that comes down to money and financial burdens that will be imposed, and then the legalities. And then I think that Britain at the moment is trying to get a trade agreement with Singapore, and the EU has put its nose right into that and said, well, Britain can't go and do a trade agreement with Singapore because they haven't finished off with us here yet at the EU. So we're not allowing them to go ahead and do a trade deal with Singapore. In other words, the interference is starting, and the bad and the ugly is starting to show on that front. And I think that there's going to be choppy waters ahead, and it's not going to be easy for business in general. But I do think that there's a lot of happy people out there, and I don't get too specific with the companies, but Tech Corp, of course, has had an unbelievable year when not so long ago it was $4 a share, I think, in the last 12 months. And now I think it's 34, isn't it, Jim? Or it's done a huge turnaround, I know that. So, and it's benefiting from these base metals and things. I'm hearing that Robert Friedland is in vanadium. He's just finished off a major deal in that field. Vanadium is one of those exotics, perhaps could be called a rare earth, and it obviously plays a role in the battery world. And I also hear rumblings that he's starting to look at significant diamond situations, as that seems to have weathered the storm very, very well as a commodity. When you look at what has happened to the ugly, we're getting back to that again with the gold, and whether we like it or not, as I said before, Vancouver is very much involved in gold, and at the moment it is one sick-looking puppy. But for every person who says it's a bad situation, you'll have a lot of the brokers and a lot of the players in that space are saying, yes, this is the opportunity of a lifetime to back up the truck because gold is going to come back with a vengeance. I personally, there will be a day for that, of course, but I just don't know. You got to try and find reasons why that is, and an expert or people that come on the show, of course, I list why that is. What I will say is, listeners, that to give credence to that statement, there are many, many, many gold deals being and have been completed and are still being completed right up to the end of this year. In people saying, we see this correction in these gold price stocks as an opportunity, and money is coming in, and significant financings are being done in the gold space at the moment. So it's not as if the spirit has been removed or the enthusiasm has been removed. It's been removed from the players that play the stocks, obviously, because the prices of these stocks have just dropped so dramatically. But the actual money coming in at the investment level and saying, it's time to start getting out the checkbooks and getting more involved in some of these meaningful gold deals, that activity is very, very high at the moment. I can tell you that.
We'll have more with Martyn Element right after the break.
I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Martyn Element. One stock that's been going higher, I guess, both literally and figuratively, is marijuana.
Yes, I just said off on the break to Jim that on the good is the marijuana situation, and we've discussed it before. And it's because in America, of all the countries in the world today, it's experiencing almost what Prohibition must have been like. Coming out of Prohibition for the liquor, on many states in America, of course, are voting not just for medical, but recreational marijuana. And yes, it's affecting the actual sales of beer in places like Colorado, which doesn't surprise me. But, the American people can see, as an investment, and they can see these investors and these fund managers can see that this is a not unlike, by the way, the electric car is to the car, and marijuana is to people, recreationally. I mean, it's a huge movement, and people are saying, well, of course it's going to be a financial huge success. We're witnessing, the rebirth, as I say, of Prohibition, but. So they want to get involved, and they want to put money, and they want to invest. Well, where do they invest? How can the average person in America, or the fund managers, or the people managing large amounts of money? Well, the only real place they can invest, and they know it's going right into marijuana, is up here in Canada. Because of the 13 licenses that have been granted, I think only 7 or 8 of those licenses are in trading, publicly listed companies here in Canada. And that's another reason why the numbers have gone so ballistic. We had the one Canopy, or it used to be called
Weeds, I think, or something like that.
The biggest one, Tweed, in Toronto, that went through $1 billion capitalization just a short while ago. I don't know if it's pulled back since then, and it's because it's the numbers and the purchasing of the stock. I wouldn't say artificial, but it's being priced at tremendous multiples because of the influence, I think, of the American money coming into our marketplace. And the capitalizations of these companies is going through the roof, because it's one place that the American public or American investors can actually put money in and get benefit from what they see to be a major shift or trend in the world today of marijuana becoming a commodity and becoming it is a very valuable commodity.
Yes, and I've seen ads on television from California asking for investors. Everybody thinks of marijuana as something to smoke, but they're putting it into barbecue sauces, into soft drinks, into candies, which has a lot of people concerned because a little kid might confuse the candy for mom and dad for something that they might eat. But still, beer looks pretty much like pop. They just put it in a different kind of bottle. And they're even talking about marijuana-infused ales and so on. So the marketing possibilities are endless.
Endless, absolutely endless. I couldn't agree more. And I think the medical applications are potentially phenomenal. We're seeing more and more evidence that it actually works, especially with people having things like epileptic fits, or people that have really real problems with arthritis or problems with cancer treatments, that it's no longer hocus pocus and people sniggering. It's now considered to be a valid product. And of course, you've got the big medical companies, the squibs of the world, that are very upset because they've lobbied and they're very upset, and they're putting lots of money into anti-marijuana because they've not got a piece of the action. So it's a vicious circle, and it'll work its way through. But somewhere along the line there, I'm telling you, people are making themselves absolute fortunes on being able to decipher which and how to do that. Although I would have to say, listeners, at this stage with those marijuana stocks, I'd have to say you've got to be careful would be an understatement, because I think there's so much hot air has gone into that for the reasons I've just mentioned. So once again, just at this stage of that whole scenario, I'd be very, 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 very cautious, and I would be very careful in entering into marijuana related stocks. And that's not to say I don't think it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and $1 billion capitalization on some of these marijuana situations might seem a small capitalization in 2 or 3 years' time, but right now the spike has gone into a lot of those stocks. So be very, very careful, listeners, I would think, on that particular scenario.
Well, we did see a Richmond-based marijuana company go under, and they had to auction off all their equipment. So yeah, it's not a guaranteed bet whatsoever. Again, until it's legal in Canada, and maybe it never will be. It's a promise, but we've seen politicians break their promises all the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think in one form or another it will come about, but you're quite right, Jim. It's not as easy to implement as it is to say it, and I think that is true in more than just this marijuana situation, of course,
And going back to Brexit, England has historically had problems with Germany and France, and yet historically, you'll notice they're still in England. They still speak English there.
Yes.
I think if somebody's going to challenge the English to do anything or achieve something, they might be messing with the wrong people.
Well, I think they might, and only time will tell on all that. But as we said on this show over the last, coming probably into 2 years now, Jim, that at first it was a very, very, very sad scenario with these poor innocent people that are caught in these terrible wars that have gone on. And, I think it's going to cost Angela Merkel her head with what she did, feeling for those poor people and letting them come in those large numbers. And I think it'll be, unfortunately, the unwinding. So acts of kindness become political animals, and they become financially terribly burdening, and it just becomes a very vicious circle. And on that note, we have a fellow that a lot of the listeners know, and Frank Giustra, who has had a lot of success over the years in the mining, particularly in the mining business and in the movie business. Just about to bring out his movie, the Blade Runner, the remake of Blade Runner. But Frank, I said to some friends of mine who know him and work very closely with him, I said for the last 3 or 4 weeks, I said, well, Frank Giustra, doesn't ever hear his name, he doesn't seem to be around, and that's very explainable, Martyn. He's over on on the beaches there on those little islands in Greece, rolling his sleeves up and not just putting his money in there, he's putting himself in there too. So good for you, Frank. I heard that just the other day, and you were conspicuous by your absence, and there you are, money be money, but they're actually on those beaches with those poor innocent people, and good for you in that, if that's okay to mention that on the show, Jim.
This is exactly the time of year you mentioned something like that.
Yeah, I was just hearing all that, and that's something to be, talk is cheap, but actually doing something is a lot more difficult.
Martyn, it's been a great year talking to you, and all the best to you and your family over the holiday season.
Well, I do have 2 little boys, and I'm also, amongst other things, going to be Santa Claus as well. And although every morning I wake up without Santa Claus, it's like Christmas to me with these 2 little boys. So it's been a very good year. I'm looking forward to an exceptional year in 2017, and I'm looking forward to doing more shows. And thank you, and a very best of the season to all my listeners, and from my family to yours.
My guest has been Martyn Element, and you know exactly what he does. He actually travels the world. London, Sydney, any place where money is being raised for business, Martyn is there. Again, Martyn, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Jim, and the best to you and your family.
You're listening to HowStreet.com Radio. Find us on Twitter at Talk Digital Net. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. You can forward questions to info@HowStreet.com. I'm a very jolly Jim Goddard. Have a great holiday.
Comments made on HowStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.